A single dad gives his blanket to a quiet woman and her baby on a flight. What begins as kindness becomes a second chance neither of them saw coming. Now, before we begin, if you believe in healing in chosen families and the quiet magic of kindness, subscribe and let's walk this path together. The plane droned like a tired heart, steady and low, as it pushed through a stretch of midnight sky stitched with snow. From 30,000 feet, the world below was nothing but shadows and storms. Cabin lights dimmed, passengers half lulled by the rhythm of engine hum and occasional turbulence. Somewhere near the rear, a baby cried. Not loud, just a soft, rising whimper that seemed to vibrate in the thin air like a thread ready to snap. Row 17, Seat A, housed a man built like he'd once carried things heavier than grief and longer than goodbyes. His shirt was flannel, his jeans soft with wear, and on his lap sat a travel-worn duffel bag zipped halfway open. He shifted, sighing through his nose as he reached into the front pocket and drew out a small, laminated photo. A girl, 7, maybe 8, her smile crooked with missing tooth, her braids messy but proud. "Stay safe, Daddy." The back of the photo said in scrawled pink ink, "Bring me back a magnet or a bear, or both." He kissed the photo once, folded it back in his wallet, and leaned into the cold glass of the window. His breath fogged against it. Somewhere far below was her bedroom lamp glowing through a frosted window. He imagined it still on. The baby's cry rose again, thinner now, edged with something hollow, discomfort, maybe cold. He glanced across the aisle. A woman sat 2 seats away in 17C, curled slightly inward. Her shoulders trembled beneath a thin, slate-colored coat. The baby squirmed in her arms, a hand no bigger than a silver dollar peeking from a torn blanket. The woman's face was pale, not from fear but from something older, like tiredness with no sleep at the end of it. He waited, 1 second, then 2. No one moved, not the flight attendants, not the man in the aisle seat, not the weary businesswoman in front who slipped in earplugs and pulled her scarf over her eyes. So he unbuckled quietly and stood. The movement earned him a glance from a stewardess nearby, who paused but said nothing. He opened the overhead bin, pulled out the thin airline blanket, and walked the 2 steps to her row. She looked up, wide eyes dark-lashed, startled but not defensive. Her grip on the child tightened instinctively. "You need this more than I do," he said, voice quiet, holding the blanket out like a peace offering. She stared at it, then at him. A second passed, and he thought she might refuse. But the baby cried again, a tiny hiccup of protest, and her shoulders slumped. She reached out and took the blanket with careful fingers. "Thank you," she whispered, almost as if amused at the sound of her own voice. He nodded once, didn't smile, just turned and eased back into his seat. The next few minutes passed in unspoken rhythms. She wrapped the baby snugly, gently, her movements reverent. She tucked one end of the blanket beneath her coat and rested her cheek against the baby's forehead. The crying stopped as suddenly as it had started. The man folded his arms across his chest and let his eyes close. Time passed like slow water. The flight stretched across sleeping hours, stitched with occasional coughs, snores, and the rustle of magazines. The man didn't sleep. He rested, eyes half-lidded, breath slow. Every few minutes he glanced to his left. The baby was asleep now. The woman rocked gently, her hand tracing small circles on the infant's back. She was humming something, barely audible, a tune that seemed too old for someone her age. He turned his gaze forward again. Around 3 a.m., or what passed for in the sky-born coffin, the cabin light dimmed 1 level lower. A stewardess tiptoed down the aisle, offering water. The man declined. The woman looked up. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward the tray. The stewardess poured. When she reached the man's row, she paused. "That was kind of you," she said under her breath. He didn't answer, just shrugged and looked out the window again. Eventually, the woman leaned toward the aisle, catching his eye. She doesn't like planes, she said, her voice soft, even when she doesn't know she's on one. Most of us don't, he replied. A breath passed. I'm Mark, he offered, keeping his tone level, like saying his name was a minor courtesy, not a door left open. She hesitated. Then, Marianne. The baby stirred. Marianne adjusted her. Her movements were practiced, not new mother nervous, but tired and intuitive. She's Ellie, she added. He nodded, said nothing. Names hung in the air like stories unopened. Mark reached down into his bag and pulled out a thermos. He unscrewed the lid and poured a little into the cap. Black coffee, lukewarm by now. He took a sip, then hesitated. He poured another capful and extended it across the aisle. She blinked at it. It's not poisoned, he said with the faintest smirk. Marianne laughed. A short, surprised sound, like someone startled by sunlight. She accepted it, held the cup with both hands. They drank in silence, not looking at each other. The baby slept soundly now, lips parted, fists clenched against her mother's chest. Mark tilted his head, studying the little girl. She's small. 8 weeks, Marianne said. Born early. Spent the first 12 days wrapped in wires. She looks strong now. She is. A pause. Then, she gets that from someone else. Mark let the words settle. He wasn't the kind to pry open silence with questions. She your only one? She asked suddenly, as if needing to ask something to make the quiet less sharp. He smiled softly. One's enough. Her name's Beth. She's 7. Makes the best mud pies in the county. Marianne chuckled. He pulled out the photo again and passed it across the aisle. She's beautiful, she said, and brave. You can tell. She misses her mom, Mark said, more to himself than her. But she's learning that it's okay to laugh again. Do you? He blinked at her. Laugh again, she clarified. He looked out the window. Not yet. A silence followed, not uncomfortable, just heavy. Truth often made things heavier. Why are you flying? She asked. Had a job interview, he said. Delivery supervisor. Pays enough that we could keep the house another year. And, he shrugged, didn't get it. Said I was overqualified. That's cruel. It's life, he said. And my daughter needs someone who shows up, not someone who sulks. Marianne nodded. Her hand, still cradling Ellie, moved in slow, steady motions. She didn't even cry this much when we left, she murmured. I think I was more scared than she was. You look scared, Mark said, not unkindly. She glanced up, eyes wide. Really? He nodded. Not the bad kind. The kind that means you're carrying too much. Another silence, but this one warmer. Why were you scared? He asked quietly. Marianne looked at him for a long time, then back down to Ellie. Because sometimes running away doesn't feel like escaping. It feels like walking into a storm with no umbrella. Storms pass. She didn't answer that. Instead, she touched the bracelet on her wrist. Beaded, handmade, cheap but loved. The letter E shimmered in faded pink. Mark noticed but didn't ask. The plane jolted slightly. A few passengers murmured. The captain's voice crackled overhead with reassurances. Just a patch of wind. We'll be descending in 2 hours. Marianne pulled the blanket higher around Ellie. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. Would it be okay, she asked suddenly, if I just sat here while longer? He frowned, confused. You are sitting. She shook her head gently. No, I meant in this quiet. With you. He understood then. He gave a small nod. They didn't speak for a long while after that. The baby slept between them, like a bridge neither had expected to cross. And when Mark finally dozed off, chin tilted toward the window, Marianne looked at him with an expression so soft it almost broke. Her whisper barely made a sound. Thank you for the blanket. It wasn't about the blanket. It never was. Somewhere over the Midwest, The sky softened from obsidian to charcoal. The clouds below parted in slow drifts, revealing patchy squares of snow-covered fields stitched with highways and winter roads. The cabin lights blinked up a notch, a quiet reminder that time had passed even in stillness. Mark stirred first. He blinked into the muted light, breath fogging faintly as he straightened his spine and rubbed a knot from the back of his neck. His seat was warm from where he'd leaned, and the ghost of a dream he couldn't quite remember clung to the corners of his eyes. Across the aisle, Marianne hadn't moved. Her eyes were closed, but she wasn't asleep, just still, with the kind of practiced stillness of someone who learned long ago not to flinch at every shadow. Ellie snuffled against her chest and stirred. Mark reached into his bag, without a word, and pulled out two things, a granola bar and a thermos. He unscrewed the lid and poured 2 small capfuls of what warmth remained. He glanced her way. She opened her eyes, looked at the cap, then at him. He didn't speak. She took it this time without hesitation. Her hands wrapped around the small metal cup like it held more than coffee. Ellie shifted again, restless now. One small fist reached up to tug at her mother's neckline. Marianne bounced her gently, whispering words Mark couldn't hear but could feel. Somehow, those low maternal murmurs that required no language. Mark unwrapped the granola bar and snapped it in half. He extended one half toward her. Marianne blinked. "You don't have to keep feeding me," she said, but the corner of her mouth curved slightly. He handed it over anyway. "Not feeding. Sharing." She took it. "You sound like someone who's raised a kid." "I am someone who's raised a kid," he said. "On good days, anyway." "Good days." "She lets me braid her hair without calling child services," he deadpanned. Marianne laughed. It wasn't loud, but it was real. They ate in the same unhurried rhythm that had defined everything between them since takeoff. No rush, just quiet acknowledgement that the clock was still ticking, even if their part of the world had paused. "Do you travel a lot?" Mark asked after a while. She shook her head. "Not anymore." "Used to?" "Yes." He waited. She didn't elaborate. Instead, she adjusted the way Ellie lay across her chest and reached down to pull a folded cloth from the diaper bag. It was a faded muslin burp cloth, floral pattern worn thin at the corners. She wiped gently at Ellie's chin, then folded it again with practiced precision. "You're good with her," he said. "She's all I have left." She didn't flinch when she said it, just said it like it was a number, plain, factual, inevitable. Mark said nothing for a beat. Then, "People always say that like it's a tragedy." Marianne looked over, surprised. He shrugged. "But sometimes one person is enough." She turned away, suddenly busying herself with smoothing the baby's hair. "You sound like someone who's lost people." "I've lost the same person more than once." Marianne didn't ask for the story, and he didn't offer it. Instead, she placed Ellie in the adjacent seat beside her, using the blanket to create a sort of nest. The baby shifted and settled without protest. It gave Marianne a moment to stretch her arms, her spine curving like a willow unbending after a storm. She sighed long and low. Mark noticed the bracelet again, beads strung haphazardly in faded colors. He could see the tiny letters now. E+M. "She make that?" he asked. Marianne nodded. "I made one for each of us after we left." Something to remind her, later, that she didn't come from nothing. "You didn't either," he said. Her eyes flicked toward him, unreadable. Then she said, "That's not what he told me." Mark didn't need a name. He understood from the way she straightened her coat, the way her hands kept busy, folding and refolding Ellie's things. That kind of quietness only came from long years spent being taught that your presence was too loud. "She'll grow up different," she added after a moment. "That's the whole point." "She already is," he said. "She has you." A pause. The hum of the cabin returned, engine steady. "I haven't told anyone where we're going," Marianne said, not meeting his eyes. "Not even myself." Mark watched her. "Does that scare you?" She nodded. "Just once. But staying scared me more." They sat in silence again, letting that truth settle. After a while, Mark reached into his duffel and pulled out something wrapped in old cloth. A small book, frayed at the edges. The Little Prince, Marianne read, surprised. I haven't seen that in years. My wife used to read it to Beth, he said. Now I carry it with me on trips. Something about the fox always gets me. She traced the spine gently, as if afraid to smudge the memory. I used to love that line, she said softly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Mark nodded. Yeah, but I always liked the part about the watering of the rose, about showing up every day. That one hurts a little more, she said, not unkindly. He looked at her then, really looked, at the half-moons under her eyes, the tired elegance of her features, the way she held herself like a cathedral with a cracked foundation, still standing, still sacred. Even if the world tried to tear it down, outside the window, the sky had begun to bleed soft amber. The baby woke again, but didn't cry this time. Just reached up, caught a curl of her mother's hair, and held it. Mark smiled. Looks like she's a fan of poetic timing. Marianne chuckled. The captain's voice came on again, soft and clipped. We'll be descending in approximately 35 minutes. Local temperature is just below freezing. Please begin preparing for arrival. The world would start again soon. Mark picked up the book and tucked it away. Marianne pulled Ellie closer, adjusting the sling strap around her shoulder. He noticed her hands trembling slightly. Cold, he asked. No, she said. I don't know. I thought I'd feel different, landing. You will, he said. When? Not today. But one day, she'll ask you where she was when it all changed. And you'll tell her it was somewhere between clouds and coffee. Marianne smiled. It lingered longer this time. She looked at him, then down at Ellie, then back again. I know we'll never meet again, she said, not as a question but as a quiet fact. You don't know that, he replied. She tilted her head, skeptical. You going to chase me through the terminal? He smiled. Not unless you steal my book. She laughed, and it was warm. Then she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a pen. Here, she said, handing him a napkin from the baby bag. So you can write your daughter a story about the time her dad gave his blanket to a stranger and changed nothing but made it easier to breathe. He took it, folded it into his coat pocket, without reading. She whispered something to Ellie, who blinked up at her mother with drowsy wonder. Mark stared out the window. Snowflakes raced past, caught in the pressurized hush of descent. The world tilted, preparing to meet them. Wherever you're going, he said, I hope they have stars. Marianne's voice was soft but certain. If not, I'll hang up a few of my own. The plane dipped lower, the engines groaning in response. Neither of them moved. They had just enough sky left to say nothing at all. And in that last 30 minutes of shared silence, something passed between them that couldn't be measured in time zones or miles. Not friendship, not fate, but something warmer than either, like breadcrumbs scattered in the dark, just enough to find the way forward. The plane touched down with a sigh, tires skimming asphalt slick with morning frost. A low murmur rippled through the cabin. Seat belts clicked open, overhead bins snapped. For a moment, everything smelled like recycled air, coffee dregs and the faint electricity of arrival. The world beyond the window was a washed-out watercolor tarmac and taxi lights, blue and blinking in the distance. Mark stayed seated, hands on his knees, watching the slow procession of passengers shuffle forward. The overhead lights had fully risen now, making everyone look more tired than they were. Across the aisle, Marianne held Ellie close to her chest, her hand gently cradling the baby's head beneath the soft weight of his blanket. Her hair was mussed, her coat creased. Still, there was a poise to her, something deliberate in how she moved, like each gesture was chosen for its economy, its control. They hadn't spoken much since the last announcement. Some silences grow heavy and awkward. Theirs had grown warm, familiar, the kind of quiet That doesn't ask to be filled. Mark stood, retrieving his duffel from the overhead. The zipper snagged briefly, and when he gave a tug, a tiny pink sock tumbled out. Not his. He bent to retrieve it. Holding it up, Ellie reached for it with a chirp. Marianne smiled, small, almost shy. "She's a collector," she said. "Anything tiny enough to lose." He handed the sock over. "She'll be a treasure hunter someday." "She already is," Marianne said. Then, after a pause, "She found you." The words landed with more weight than he expected. He gave her a look, soft, unreadable, and slung the bag over his shoulder. The line moved. Mark stepped into the aisle, turning to offer her room. She rose slowly, balancing baby and bag and blanket with the careful choreography of someone used to doing it all alone. He followed her down the narrow walkway, the baby's head bobbing slightly with each step. Ellie looked over her mother's shoulder and blinked up at Mark, one hand loosely holding the corner of the blanket like a flag of truce. They exited the plane together. The jet bridge was colder than the cabin had been. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the airport smell, cleaners, coffee, too many lives moving at once, rushing around them. People scattered in all directions. Some ran, some wept into phones. Some were already lost in their next chapter. Mark and Marianne moved side by side, wordless again, each step an echo of what they didn't want to admit. This was the part where things unraveled. Marianne slowed. Her eyes scanned the terminal, every face, every uniform. Her grip on Ellie shifted, tighter now. Mark noticed. "You okay?" She nodded but didn't speak. They walked toward the exit, toward the pickup zones and coffee kiosks and families holding signs with names. Snow fell outside in soft spirals, landing wet on the giant glass windows that lined the arrivals hall. Mark stopped. "You waiting on someone?" Marianne hesitated. Then, not exactly. He followed her gaze. A man stood near the exit, crisp coat, black scarf, one hand holding a phone, the other tapping something into a tablet. His expression was steel, corporate, like he'd never said a kind word unless it had a purpose. He hadn't seen her yet. Marianne took a single breath. Her jaw tightened. Her shoulders rose, then dropped slowly. Mark shifted closer. "Want me to stay?" She didn't answer for a moment. Then, just for a minute, he nodded. He stayed. She didn't move toward the man. Instead, she stepped slightly away from the flow of people into a small pocket of space near the window, where snow fell in slow motion behind them. Ellie stirred. The blanket slipped slightly, and Marianne adjusted it with trembling fingers. Mark finally spoke. "That him?" "His brother." A pause. "I was supposed to hand her over." The words were barely audible. Mark turned toward her. "You don't want to?" "I don't know anymore," she said. "I thought it was the safest thing. But now I'm not sure if safe is the same as right." He waited. Marianne looked up at him. "You probably think I'm a mess." "No," he said. "I think you've been brave longer than most people ever have to be." Ellie squirmed again. Marianne looked down at her, then back at Mark. "I don't even know where I'd go," she said. "I left everything behind." "Maybe not everything," he said. She gave him a sharp look, half question, half plea. "You left the pieces that hurt," he said. "What's left might be enough to start again." Silence. Thick. Full. The man at the exit glanced up, spotted her. Marianne stiffened. Mark's voice came low and steady. "You don't owe anyone your silence. I don't know how to be loud. You don't have to be. You just have to stay standing." Marianne turned slightly, shielding Ellie from view as the man approached. His gait was fast, clipped. "Miss Layton," he said. "You're late." The name hit the air like a drop plate. Mark said nothing. He watched. Marianne tilted her chin. "I changed my mind." "You what?" "I'm not giving her to you." He blinked, confused. This was arranged. Your attorney said. "She was mine to lose," Marianne said. "And I didn't." I won't. The man scoffed. Where will you go? Do you even have a plan? I have a person, she said, and that's more than I had yesterday. He looked toward Mark, finally noticing him. And who are you? Mark stepped forward, shoulders calm. Someone who gave her a blanket, he said, and found out that kindness weighs more than contracts. The man opened his mouth, but Mark was already turning away. Marian followed. They stepped through the terminal doors together. The cold hit them instantly, sharp, clear, alive. Outside, snow danced in quiet spirals, catching in Marianne's lashes and Ellie's blanket. Mark hailed a cab with 2 fingers. The yellow car slid up to the curb. Marianne turned to him. Thank you. He looked down at Ellie. She already said it for you. She hesitated. I don't know if this is a beginning or an end. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the napkin she'd given him on the plane. He handed it back. Then call when you figure out. She looked at the napkin, then at him. Will you answer? I always answer, he said. The cab door opened. She paused again, 1 foot inside. Then, you really don't know who I am, do you? He raised an eyebrow. She smiled. That's the best part. And she got in. As the car pulled away, she looked back, just once, through the fog window, eyes soft, full of some new understanding. Mark watched until the yellow blurred into the snow. He turned toward the street, pulled out his phone, tapped open a message thread. Beth, his daughter's name. He sent 1 line. On my way, sweetheart, you're about to meet someone brave. And the snow kept falling. And the morning kept becoming something better than the night. The porch light was on. It flickered slightly in the wind, casting a soft amber glow across the snow-covered steps and onto the uneven path that wound from the gate to the house. Mark's boots crunched up the walkway, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder, breath ghosting in front of him with every step. The house was small, paint chipped around the edges, a few shingles missing, but still like it always had, stubborn, familiar, waiting. From behind a foggy window, a small silhouette bounced. He smiled before he even reached the door. It opened before he knocked. Beth stood there barefoot, hair wild, pajamas too short at the ankles, 1 sock missing. In her hands, a flashlight. She aimed it straight at his chest like a sheriff catching a bandit. Password, she demanded. He chuckled. Pancakes are superior to waffles. She stepped aside with mock solemnity. You may enter. He crouched to her level and wrapped her into a hug that swallowed her up. She smelled like maple syrup and crayons. You were gone forever, she mumbled into his shoulder. 3 days, he said. That's hardly forever. It felt like it. He scooped her up and carried her inside. The warmth hit immediately. Wood-burning stove crackling in the corner. The scent of something cinnamon-sweet on the air. Her drawing still taped proudly on the walls. She pointed to one by the couch. That's you, she said. And that's me. And that's a bear, but it's friendly. I'm glad, he murmured. They settled on the couch. Beth nestled against his side, one leg flung over his. He listened to her chatter about the snow fort she'd built with the neighbor's kid, how she was sure the cat down the road was a wizard, how she'd saved him a cookie, but it disappeared mysteriously. Her cheeks pinkened at that part. He let her talk. Later, when she finally dozed off, her cheek pressed against his arm, he sat quietly and listened to the stove pop and sigh. The duffel sat by the door, untouched. His phone lay on the table, screen dark. Outside, snow fell again, slower now, a whisper. He didn't reach for anything, just sat in the soft domestic hush, watching his daughter breathe. In the days that followed, life resumed its shape. There were dishes, errands, bedtime stories, lost mittens. Mark fixed a loose gutter. He patched the old screen door. The little routines stitched themselves back together with the slow, gentle confidence of a home that had survived storms. But something lingered. He found himself glancing out the window more often, at the road, at the mailbox. Sometimes he'd wake up thinking he heard a baby cry, only to find Beth fast asleep in the next room. Other times, he'd catch himself pouring 2 cups of coffee before remembering he was alone. One morning, the napkin reappeared, tucked in the pocket of his coat. Its ink faded slightly. Her handwriting, still neat. He'd unfolded it a dozen times. Never added anything to it, just kept it near. Then, 2 weeks after he returned, a letter arrived. No return address. The envelope was cream-colored, the kind that cost more than it should. Inside, a single photo, Ellie bundled in the same blanket, sleeping against Mary Ann's chest. Behind them, a beach, sky gold with dusk. Mary Ann looked different, less fragile. She wore no makeup. Her hair was wind-blown. Her expression was free. Beneath the photo, a note. She smiles in her sleep now. I think it's because someone taught us what warmth feels like. If you ever find yourself near the sea, bring the book. He held the photo for a long time. That night, he told Beth the story. Not all of it. Just the part about a baby who didn't like planes, and a mom who didn't know she was brave, and a blanket that traveled farther than most. Beth listened, eyes wide, leaning close. Did they live happily ever after? She asked. I think they're trying, he said. And then, with the quiet wisdom only children hold, she replied, Try is how it starts. Days passed, then more, and one late afternoon, just as the sun dipped behind the barn roof and painted the yard in amber and shadow, a car pulled up. It wasn't fancy. Dust clung to the tires. The back seat held a diaper bag and a folded stroller. Mark stepped onto the porch without thinking. His heart didn't race. It ached. The driver's door opened. Mary Ann stepped out. Her coat was wrinkled. Her hair was up in a loose bun. She looked like sleep had been hard-earned and inconsistent. But her eyes, those soft, uncertain eyes from row 17, were steady now. Ellie was on her hip, drowsy but alert, one hand tangled in the old blanket. They stood facing each other in the yard for a full minute, saying nothing. Then she spoke. She kept the blanket, Mary Ann said. Mark nodded. She earned it. I wasn't sure where else to go. You didn't have to be. Mary Ann exhaled. The sound trembled. Are you okay? He asked. She shook her head. But I'm here. He stepped down from the porch. The snow crunched under his boots. Beth burst out of the house behind him. Dad, someone's here. With a baby. She stopped halfway to them. Looked up. Mary Ann bent slightly, smiling. Beth eyed her, then looked at Ellie. She's tiny, she said. Mary Ann smiled. She's loud, too. You'd like her? Beth beamed. I can show her my drawings. Mary Ann looked at Mark. If that's all right. He nodded once. I was hoping you'd ask. They stepped into the house together. The baby nestled into his shoulder like she'd never left. Mary Ann sat at the kitchen table as Beth fetched every drawing she'd ever made. Mark poured coffee. The stove sighed. Something weightless, returned. That night, Ellie slept in the room beside Beth's, her tiny breaths mixing with the soft rustle of the curtain. Mark stood in the doorway, watching. Mary Ann leaned beside him. She didn't cry once, she whispered. She knows she's home, he said. She turned to him. He didn't look at her, just reached out and gently pulled the blanket up over Ellie's shoulder. His fingers brushed the edge of Mary Ann's hand. She didn't move away. A lamp in the hallway cast a warm glow over them both. You sure about this? He asked quietly. No, she whispered. But I want to be. That's enough, he said. She looked at him, eyes misting, and he whispered, almost to himself, blankets are meant to be shared. Down the hall, Beth murmured in her sleep. And Mark, for the first time in a long time, turned out the light, not with fear, not with grief, but with a quiet certainty that he wasn't alone in the dark anymore. If this story touched you, subscribe or share where you're watching from.